Thank you, Stephen. Muito obrigada. And boa tarde, everybody. I know you are all extremely tired. I'll try to keep it not very long. I will be talking about a philosopher I think makes sense to discuss when we discuss natural and artificial intelligence, Dennett. And, well, let's go. Actually, this talk is a homage to Dennett. You might know Dennett died in 2024. And I think that to get our topic of natural and artificial intelligence into perspective, I will go through the foundations of his view of mind. This sounds extra theoretical for this late in the day, but I believe it will be useful for us given our discussions here. But first, some context, especially for those who are not very familiar with Dennett's work, especially students I see around. So a brief profile. Dennett saw himself, as he put it in his 2023 biography, he had written the year before he died, he saw himself as a let many flowers bloom philosopher of cognition. He could actually come to defend strong AI, but did not fret over the singularity, the point at which human intelligence is surpassed by artificial intelligence, or the existential threat, the risk of being eliminated by machines that are more intelligent than us. Lots of people talk about these topics, not so much Dennett's topics. Often he would say things like, I don't think there will be a really conscious humanoid agents in the near future, and I think there are good reasons not to try to get one, and that there are good reasons, there are no good reasons to try to get one, and there are very good reasons not to strive to have one. This, in spite of the fact that throughout his whole career, he was quite close to what was happening in AI, from, say, the general problem solver of Newell and Simon to his proximity to MIT COG project. Because he, as he put it, he always regarded AI as philosophy and psychology. But if you listen to some of his last public pronouncements, say in YouTube, shortly before his death, when talking about what he called the real problems of AI, he thought that the real problems AI poses are political and regard freedom and control, and this made me think of Olena Komar's talk yesterday. He would recognize himself in some of the things being said there. Anyway, one thing Dennett did when approaching, sorry, I'm losing my voice, the best thing to happen when one is giving a talk. One thing Dennett always did when approaching phenomena of sentience, intelligence, and consciousness was to always consider human, animal, and artificial minds in parallel as cases of mind in the world. Thus, he arrived at what I will be calling here his many worlds ontology, which, as I will try to show you, posed some problems to his officially professed physicalism. So my steps here in this talk will be, first I'll try to summarize to you some insights and some problems of Dennett's physicalist, anti-reductionist theory of mind, thinking of the whole span of his work from his 1969 Content and Consciousness to the last book he actually wrote, his autobiography, I've Been Thinking. And then I'll try to bring out, I will do that very briefly, to try to bring out what I think is a tension between his many worlds view and that his intentional stance leads to, and the physicalist position that he officially holds. And I will try to suggest to you that Dennett's use of the Salarzian concepts of manifest image and scientific image leads to what I think are unsurmountable difficulties regarding consciousness and language, difficulties which are per se quite interesting if we are thinking about natural and artificial intelligence. We'll get there, but first just one more word about AI that I think will get us a bit closer to Dennett. I don't know if you know this French philosopher, Daniel Andler. In his recent book, Intelligence artificielle, Intelligence humaine, le double énigme, Daniel Andler, a philosopher, mathematician, cognitive scientist, identifies what he sees as a shift in recent philosophical thinking about AI. He claims that we have moved from a situation in which the challenge for philosophers was seeking to understand why AI fails to simulate human cognition, a task, as you all know from the history of AI, in which in the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, Californian philosophers such as John Searle or Hubert Dreyfus were involved. We moved to a very different situation. In Andler's terms, it is no longer a matter for us of modeling in a top-down way I'm missing the most important thing. We moved from a situation where the difficulty seemed to be that it wouldn't be possible to successfully simulate human cognition to a situation where the challenge for philosophy is to understand why AI is so extraordinarily successful. And in Daniel Andler's terms, it is no longer for us a matter of modeling in top-down way what we think of as human conscious intelligence, taking, for example, the way humans demonstrate logical or mathematical theorems or play chess, and thus create symbolic models that imitate such performances, which would be imitating the procedures of our own conscious thought. From this perspective, our thought would be something like an extension of logic, and our thought would be thought of as calculation. But rather, recent successes are the result of feeding computing machines with vast amounts of data and letting the machines learn on their own, bottom up, as it were, from experience, as it were. And this is the shift, the philosophically interesting shift according to Andler. And I want to propose to you that Dennett was in a way always there, interested in this bottom-up view of mind. And his anti-intellectualist, anti-representationalist view of the mental was always going after this. Andler sees here a kind of victory of empiricism against rationalism. I wouldn't go this far. I don't think I would call Dennett an empiricist. For those of you who are interested not only in cognitive science but also in history of philosophy and history of analytic philosophy, I think it's kind of interesting to think where Dennett get his inspiration in order to approach, as a philosopher of cognition, the phenomena of intelligence, sentience, and consciousness. And doing what I said he did, so always considering parallel human, animal, artificial minds. And we find, if we look at the history of philosophy, Dennett thinks that his real patterns, intentional stance, multiple drafts model, view of mind, comes from takes bits and pieces of inspiration from all these people. So it's philosophically a quite complicated blend. These people are Ludwig Wittgenstein, Quine, Hilary Putnam, Wilfrid Sellers, and also cognitive scientists that for Dennett considers extremely important for development of his view of mind, such as Alan Turing or Herbert Simon. So a complicated blend philosophically, and I don't think it makes for empiricism. The real patterns anti-intellectualist view of mind of Dennett is a result of all this. And now I will try to make explicit what I will call the many worlds ontology Dennett is committed to, and try to identify some of the challenges it poses for current discussions about the mind. Ideally, in a bigger picture discussion, this will be better put in terms of realism, whether his view of mind is realist or not, and maybe emergence, whether his view of mind is a view of the emergence of the mind or not. But this will be in the background. So first, trying to give you a picture of Dennett's view of mind. One obstacle I think should be removed right away if we want to get clear about Dennett's insights. The intentional stance, which is the core concept of Dennett's view of mind, was once called, or actually very often called and criticized as interpretivist and as a form of anti-realism, as if what he was saying when he was talking about the intentional stance as attribution of mental states, beliefs and desires to physical system, as if he was saying that mental states did not really exist, but words precisely that, just attributions, just interpretations. Yet Dennett is sufficient to read him to realize that he's no social constructivist, and neither is he primarily interested in how language use makes room for, say, social or institutional entities. His interest is cognition. whether it be us, other animals, or artificial systems, it's always cognition. And the intentional stance is a viewpoint from which physical systems are, indeed, attributed beliefs and desires and their behavior predicted. And it is to be contrasted with what he calls the physical stance and the design stance. And all these three stances, and in taking these stances, we might either be involved in folk psychology or doing physics or doing science of cognition. All these three stances are stances on the same system. It could be me, it could be a dog, it could be an AI. And Dennett's philosophy of psychology, let's call it that, is built on a conception of the relations between these three stances. And as he puts it in his 2017 book, From Bacteria to Bach, the intentional stance works for systems designed to use information to accomplish function. I want to put this to your consideration, whether this is interpretivist, whether this is a doing away of mental states. Now, from his early publications to the most recent formulations of his views, Dennett's approach to the mind became more and more Darwinian, and it is with Darwinian eyes that we should read this claim. The intentional stance works for systems designed to use information to accomplish function. We get so his last word regarding the intentional stance is better grasped, I want to suggest, not only in terms of the real patterns he speaks about when we attribute mental states to physical cognitive systems, but also in terms of the relation between those mental states and Darwinism, and also of the relation between our capacity of attribution and the evolution of that, I will call it mind-reading capacity that we have. So we get a grasp of what Dennett means by intentional stance. Let's put it like this. I don't know if there are psychologists, neuroscientists in the audience, so people who would work with the notion of mind reading. I think we can get a grasp of what Dennett means by intentional stance, but by looking at ourselves and at the very fact that we automatically and constantly attribute mentality, beliefs, desires to other parts of the world, to other humans, to other animals, to machines, even to drawings on a white page, let's say fairies drawn on a white page, or even a smile and two dots for a nose. So we are extremely liberal attributors of mentality. And if we call this mind reading, as in psychology and neuroscience, it's often done, and also in philosophy, we should think of mind reading as no social construction, although it's not, let's say, we are not there yet as conscious linguistic minds doing social construction of entities. When we talk of mind reading, we are talking about cognitive capacities, not theory building or use of language yet. We may be, yes, talking about what I would call a deep social character of the mental, but not about, this might be at stake, but not something like social constructivism would bring into the picture. So the real question for Dennett when it comes to the intentional stance is something like that. Need there really be individuated beliefs and desires, so mental states with propositional contents, inside agents' heads for mind reading to take place? This is what the question, do beliefs exist, actually means for Dennett. Claiming that patterns attributed from the intentional stance, real patterns, attributed to humans, to other animals, are real, is claiming that mind is ineliminable. But the real patterns of mindedness are novel and holistically attributed to a system from the intentional stance. There need be no, let's say, internal representations inside the agent's heads, physical system. So the idea is formulated against, I would say the idea is formulated on one hand against Fodor's industrial strength, intentional realism, and on the other hand against the Churchland's eliminativism. So The fact, and it's against Fodor on the one hand and the Churchians on the other, that Dennett claims, based on the workings of the intentional stance, that the mind is ineliminable, and that the mental states which are attributed by means of the intentional stance do not have, let's say, the shape of discrete representational mental states, so sentences in the language of thought are not needed for there to be mind, for there to be representation. So the important point here, to put it briefly, is that I would say that Dennett is claiming, with his approach to the intentional stance, that there is nothing, say, inside our brains which is intrinsically representational. And there is nothing below the level of the personal level, of our level where we are conscious linguistic agents, which is conscious. No consciousness, no representation, no language, except when we are in the picture. So whole cognitive agents. And so it is for a global intentional system that we may talk about representing. No representations inside the head, only agents represent. This could be the motto. I'll be speaking more about agents, agencies, and representation, because I think that's where Dennett's theory of mind begins and rests. As he puts it sometimes against Fodor, there's no language of thought. The only language there is this. So natural language, whether it be Portuguese, Mandarin, German, the language that we speak as global agents. And only global agents represent. There's no representations. If there were no agents representing, there would be no an sich representations. And this, I think, is what ultimately matters for the shape of Dennett's intentional stance as being anti-reductionist, anti-intellectualist position about the nature of mentality. Now, since Dennett is very often doing things that are, as Rob was saying before, things that other people close to him are doing in terms of more clearly formulated arguments, but he's sometimes sort of changing the game. I'm going to suggest that we look at the way that Dennett refers to physicalism and naturalism. When he's pressed against the wall, but not very often, Dennett professed to be a physicalist. But physicalism, as a topic, as it is discussed in the philosophy of mind literature, is not really Dennett's topic. In this, Dennett is very different than metaphysicians and analytic philosophers of science and philosophers of mind, who directly relate mind to physics as basic science and discuss mind in terms of emergence. So thinking of people like Jacob Kim or David Chalmers. I would suggest to you that we better see Dennett as a naturalist. And what does being a naturalist in a relaxed sense, as he sometimes put it, what does being a naturalist actually means? To take some of the people that in his writings on religion, the cognitive science of religion, on his last writings on Breaking the Spell and other late writings on religion, he puts it, the naturalists that inspire him are people like Hume or Nietzsche or Freud. So in what sense are these people naturalists? What does naturalism mean here? Of course, nature has, we may put it like this, many levels, many forms, quantum, chemical, galaxy scale. However, nature, as these authors have it in mind when they think of the mental as natural, is the world of life and organisms. The level, the scale of life and organisms, of agents. For a naturalist such as Dennett, the natural place, if we may recruit this expression, of human minds and other types of minds is the scale of agents. So agents governed by ends and representing at the global holistic level and not at the level of internal beliefs, the world in which they find themselves. It is in this that Dennett's naturalism contrasts to the physicalism of metaphysicians and analytical philosophers of science and mind. Because for Dennett, questions regarding the mind are always thought of as issues relating to design, form, and function, and these are characteristics to be approached in agents. always with an eye on Darwin, so always with an eye on agents, and here I would say not material constitution, okay, which is the alternative stance in, let's say, the other side. This makes Dennett's philosophy of mind close to the investigation of life and cognition, whether natural or artificial. In fact, Dennett has also been interested in artificial life, and in fact, I think we should keep this in mind when we consider his infamous approach to consciousness. So I don't take it that Dennett denies that we are conscious. He thinks that we are simply conscious. But I'm very aware of all the arguments around qualia, all the arguments that